Find the value of the derivative if it exists at the indicated extrema. Okay, so they're actually giving us that they give us the graph and they want to find the derivative. Do we have a derivative at that point? And the graph actually for this is an absolute value. So f of x equals 4 minus the absolute value of x. Well, the absolute value of x is actually a v pointing upward, but this is a negative of the absolute value, so it's going to be a v upside down, but it's shifted up by 4. So the graph will look like this. And they want to know if there's a derivative at the point 0, 4. Do we have, what's the derivative at 0? And the answer to that, I don't even have to do it, dne. Anytime you have a v, there is no derivative. So at the v there, that's an upside down v, there is no derivative. Why? The derivative is the slope of the tangent line. And if you look from the left side, the slope is positive. You look from the right side, the slope is what? Negative. If they don't match, there is no slope. So this one does not exist.
It also says next because of the absolute value can't equal 0 either, right?
Absolute value of 0 is 0.
But in the rule for the derivative of an absolute value, you can't.
Yeah, you can't take the absolute value of 0 because that's a v. If you look at the absolute value of x, Nico, I'm sorry, I said Nick. Yep. If you look at the absolute value of x, this is what the graph looks like. So at 0, you're right, there is no absolute, there's no derivative because it's a v again. So at the v's, there is no derivative. So here, if this f of x equals absolute value of x, we say what's the derivative at 0? Also dne for this one. The derivative at 1, it's fine. The derivative at 2 is fine. The derivative at negative 1 is fine, but not at 0. And again, you go, why not? Because the definition of derivative, it's the limit as delta x approaches 0 of f of x plus delta x minus f of x over delta x. So when you take in the limit from the left side does not equal the limit from the right side, and that's why you have no limits at 0, which means you have no derivative. Next on the list is number 5. I get that little circle spinning. Find the critical numbers of the function. Enter your answers in comma. The critical values. So we have g sub x equals x to the 5th minus 10 x to the 3rd. To find the critical values, you want to take the limit, the derivative, find the derivative, set it equal to 0, and see what these values are. What's the derivative of that? 5x to the 4th minus what? 30x squared. Then take that derivative, set it equal to 0. Critical values in this case where the derivative is 0 or the derivative is undefined. There is no undefined here. Where the derivative is 0. And you can factor the 5 out, and you can take x squared out. What's left? X squared minus what? Is that a 6? You can factor this. I'll just leave it. Set each factor equal to 0 and solve it. X squared equals to 0. X equals plus or minus 0. There is no plus or minus 0. This one, x squared equals 6. Square root method says x equals plus or minus the square root of 6. And it doesn't say use approximation. So it's going to be negative the square root of 6, the 0, and the square root of 6. These are the critical values. It says use a comma to separate them. So here we go. Maybe under symbol, maybe. Nope. Functions. Nope. Operation. Oh, yep. The square root. I forgot to put the minus on the front. Comma, the 0, comma, and the square root of 6.
You're going to kill me. I thought you had 2 on there.
Huh?
Did you cross out 2? You had 2 on there before, didn't you?
I got 2.
Did you cross? No, I mean on your problem.
Problem.
Oh.
You can just.
You need a problem too? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, it just,
okay.
It's just weird to me. I don't know.
Okay, I'll check that later. Okay. I'll look at that and see later. Yep.
Super 4.2. Oh yeah, no, I just.
Yeah. That's 5. Next one on the list is 10. Make it bigger. Number 10. G sub x equals, I think it's the cube root. I can't really tell. I can make it bigger, but I gotta make it smaller. Oh, the 5th root. It is the 5th root of x, and they give me the interval -1 to 1. It says locate the absolute extrema. Absolute. Well, the absolute extreme are going to be either where the derivative is 0 or the endpoints, or the derivative undefined. So let's take this one. What's the derivative of that? Well, before you take the derivative, you can write that x to what power? 1/5. What is the derivative of that? 1/5 x to what power? -4/5. Which, if you clean it, 1/5, 1/x to the 4/5, or 1/5, the 5th root of x to the 4th. That's what x to the 4/5 is. The 5th root of x to the 4th. That's my derivative. Where is the derivative equal to 0? Not the derivative as 0. Derivative equals to 0? None. Where is the derivative undefined? When x equals what? 0. Because that will make that 0. 1/0 is undefined. So the 3 values I have to check is the 0, the -1, and the 1. What is the value at -1? It's the fifth root of negative 1. The good news is you can take the fifth root of negative 1. Because that's an odd power there. And that's a negative 1. Negative 1 times negative 1, 5 times the result is minus 1. What is the fifth root of 0? 0. And the next one, what is the fifth root of 1? What is the biggest number? That's your absolute max. So the absolute max happens to be at 1, 1. The x value is 1 and the y value is 1. This is your absolute min. At negative 1, negative 1. The point. So let's see how they want it. The minimum value, they want it as a point. So a negative 1 and 1. And they already have the parentheses for us. So I just got to write negative 1, negative 1. And the maximum value 1, 1. Yep, it works. So once you have a fraction, you're going to look whether the derivative is 0 or the derivative is undefined. Derivative will never be 0 because for the fraction to be 0, the top has to be 0. The 1 will never be 0 here. Number 11. I don't like S there because masses are horrible, but that's what they wrote. And again, find the absolute extrema. Oh, square bracket there. 3 to 8. I want to take the derivative. Now, I could use the quotient rule to take the derivative. I won't do it that way. Because if you rewrite that, I'm going to make my S look like this, so you'll know that's an S. 5 times S minus 9 to the power of negative 1. I can write it like that. It's easier to take the derivative now. We use the extended power rule. Excuse me. What's the derivative S? 5 times a minus 1, negative 5. S minus 9 to the power of negative 2 times the derivative what's on the inside, which happens to be 1. So when you clean it, that's negative 5 over S minus 9 squared. If you did the quotient rule, it's the same answer. I bet you if you try with the quotient rule and simplified, your answer is the same. Now, to find the critical values, take where the derivative equal to 0, and will be none here. Nothing will make the top equal to 0. Where's the derivative is undefined? When S equals what? 9. Is 9 between 3 and 8? I can't use it. Because they're just saying between 3 and 8. I only have two values to check, the 3 and the 8. I don't have a value, and the value I have here is outside my range. Everyone see that? The 9 is not within the 3 and 8. So what is h of 3 now? 5 over 3 minus 9, which is what? Negative 6. That's a negative 5 over 6. How about h at 8? 5 over 8 minus 9, which is what? Negative 1, that's a negative 5. Which one is bigger? This one is the larger. Absolute max, where? At 3 and negative 5 over 6. And this is the smallest value, that's your absolute min. At 8 and negative 5. And I'll bypass putting them on the computer because it takes me a long time to type them. Question on this one? Everyone's good? Okay. 12. We got only a couple more left. I have g sub t equals t squared over t squared plus 3. And we're going from negative 3 to 3. Again, you're going to find the derivative. We're looking for the absolute extreme at 2. You need to find the derivative. Quotient rule. The bottom times the derivative of the top. What's the derivative of t squared? 2t. Minus the top times the derivative of the bottom. What's the derivative of t squared plus 3? 2t. The whole thing divided by the bottom squared. If you clean that, 2t times t squared, 2t cubed, plus 6t minus 2t cubed over t squared plus 3 squared. So what is the derivative? These two will cancel each other out. Six t over t squared plus 3 squared. So let's find out the critical values. Again, critical values are where the derivative is 0. And when the derivative is 0, that means when you have a fraction, the top of the fraction has to be 0. So t will have to be what? 0. Is that between minus 3 and 3?
Nope. Yes.
Yes, that's a good number. The next one where the derivative is undefined. Undefined, that means the bottom is 0. Take the square root of both sides. T squared plus 3 equals to 0. Or t squared equals negative 3. No solution. There is no way you take a number and square it and the result is negative. No way. So I don't have a point here. So I only have the 0. So there's 3 values to test. The 0, the negative 3, and the 3. Excuse me. Let's try the minus 3. Plug in what's minus 3 squared. 9 over 9 plus 3, which is what? 12, is that 3 over 4? The 0, 0 over 3, which is what? 0. The 3, 9 over 12, which is what? 3 over 4. So these two are absolute max. Have the same value. So negative 3 comma 3 over 4. And this is also absolute max. Three comma 3 over 4. This one's your absolute min. Which is 0, 0. So they gave us three boxes. One for the min, two for the maxes. Yep. We have two absolute max, and we have one absolute min. That's why I said the derivatives were crucial to know all the rules of derivative. Because if you're still having a hard time with this, it's going to make the problem 10 times worse. So the quotient rule, the derivative trig, and everything, you really want to put them in your head there quickly. Number 14. Y equals tangent pi x over 16. And that's from 0 to 4. You can write that tangent pi over 16 times x, if you don't like pi x over 16. And what's the derivative? Derivative tangent is what? In case you forgot, the derivative of tangent u. We're not talking about x, we're talking about u, because this is not just x here. Derivative tangent is what? Secant squared u times what? Is a prime. So I'm going to use that. The derivative tangent is going to be secant squared pi over 16x times the derivative of pi over 16x, which is what? Pi over 16. If you're not really at ease with the secant, that's 0 to 4. It's not 4 pi, 0 to 4. Secant is actually 1 over cosine. So it's really pi over 16. That's cosine squared. Again, when is the derivative equal to 0? None. Same question, absolute min, absolute max. When is the derivative is undefined? That's when the bottom is 0. Now, my unit circle says that cosine is 0 where? At 90 degrees. That's one of them, right? We're talking about 0 to 4. Remember, 4 is just a hair over pi. What is that unit circle? I had somewhere. Can't find my unit circle, so. I just want to show it to you. I know the answer is pi over 2. Yes. Oh, thank you. Notice the cosine of 0, well, pi over 2, 3.14. This is pi. So between 0 and somewhere to here, pi is 3.14. So the 4 is somewhere here, where my finger is. If you look, the cosine is the first number. Where's the cosine equal to 0? Only right here. There's another one on the bottom, but we're not going that far. So we stop in a 4 radian. 4 radian is somewhere right here. So the answer is 90 degrees or pi over 2. Thank you. So that means I want this one to equal pi over 2. That's what I want it. I want the argument to equal pi over 2. So I can drop the pi's out of both of these. 1/16x equals 1/2, which means x equals 1/2 divided by 1/16. You gotta divide both sides by 1/16. When you divide by 1/16, that's what? X will have to be 1/2 times 16 over 1, which means x equals to 8. Is 8 between 0 and 4? No. Can't use it. All this work for nothing. Can't use it. So what is the tangent of 0? You can only use the endpoint. Tangent 0. Let me take this. Keep it for now, thank you. Tangent of 0, that's the sine over the cosine. The sine is 0. The cosine is 1. That's what a tangent is. What is 0 over 1? Is that 0? 0 divided by 1 is the sine over the cosine. 0 divided by 1 is 0. What is the tangent of 4? When x is 4. When you plug in 4 here, what are you going to have? That would be tangent. Is that pi over 4? Let's take a look at pi over 4. Divide this number by this number, what are you going to have? It's the sine divided by the cosine. These numbers are the same. When you divide them, the answer is what? 1. This is your absolute max. At 4 comma 1. This is your absolute min. At 0 comma 0. Come on, talk to me.